Right. Hey, Connor, thanks for joining us. It'd be good to get a quick intro from you and a bit about your backstory and stuff.
Okay, well, thanks for having me. My backstory. Okay, so first of all, I'm Connor. I'm originally from New Zealand, as you can probably tell. Um, I spent quite a bit of time living in Germany, but I'm just going to skip that part for now. And now I live in Canada, and I run a website called Unicorn Factory, which is New Zealand's largest freelancer marketplace. And I also have an online community slash mastermind where I help people build online marketplaces with no-code tools. And so, yeah, that's how we know each other.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm just stoked to be on.
excellent. And how did you first land on kind of building the marketplace, or your kind of first foray into, I guess,
So
building business?
I come from a non-technical background. So after I graduated from the university in Wellington, I wanted, I was just I kind of stumbled straight into the entrepreneurial world. I wanted to spend a year kind of working on my own ideas, but I was a non-technical person, so I wasn't a coder. So I jumped into, I got lucky that our university put on an entrepreneurial boot camp once a year where you basically come up with an idea, you pair up with other people in a group, and then from there, you just kind of see where your idea takes you. And so I got paired up with two developers, and we just started working on an idea. But because I was the non-technical person, I had to kind of learn some skill set to complement what they were doing. And given that they were all on product, I just decided that my area is going to become marketing and sales. So I was like the person that would go door knocking to kind of
Well,
sell the app that we were doing. And then over time, I also learned Facebook advertising. Now, eventually, that business went down the drain a bit, no plan to make revenue, but high ambitions,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
how it always goes. And so I had to essentially start making money. And the way I started to make money is to just uh, do Facebook advertising for businesses around New Zealand. And so that was kind of my starting point. But as with a lot of freelancers, one of the bigger challenges is finding clients. And so I had two options. I could either go ahead and build a normal portfolio website like everyone else, but because one, I didn't think I had great design skills, and two, my technical knowledge was still quite limited. I decided that I wanted to create the local version of Upwork or Fiverr so that I could then put myself to the very top and give myself
Yeah,
credibility that way. I thought
fantastic.
that was going to be a way to stand out from other freelancers and agencies, and then just instead of just promoting myself, just promote like freelancing as a whole,
Mm.
and then swoop in all that work that came from there. And so um, I found a tutorial online on how Webflow, which is a website building tool, built their own freelance directory with no code tools. And I used that as kind of a starting point for the Unicorn Factory, and it kind of just evolved from there into being what it is now. And yeah, so that's kind of how the marketplace got started.
Yeah, yeah. So kind of scratching your own itch in one way and just thinking actually if you controlled a bit of the narrative or the traffic, then you can direct back to your own services.
Exactly, that was the plan. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about the launch. How did it go?
Well, I mean, I didn't really have like a launch in the classical sense of putting something on like Product Hunt or whatever. It was all very localized. And again, my goal was just to get work for myself. So at the time, I was working in a co-working space. So what I decided to do was to build the first version of it, ask some friends of mine who were kind of freelancing. There were also some that were not freelancing at all. If I
Yeah.
could put them on my site, so it wasn't just me and some other bloke. And then I just started sharing it with businesses that worked in our co-working space.
Mm.
And our co-working space was pretty big, and also quite connected to the business network. So as soon as I started talking about it, and we had this like Wednesday coffee breakfast gathering in the co-working space where we could talk about our ideas. It
Yeah.
was a good way for me to kind of pitch what I was doing. And people just started telling each other about it. We started getting a little bit of work, and then I decided to go, and then there were people who were outside of the co-working space who wanted to join, so freelancers, and I was just like, I suppose, why does it have to be like just a co-working space related thing? And so then it became a Wellington, so where I was from related thing, and then it got put on a Facebook group, and it became a New Zealand specific thing, and that's just kind of how it evolved. So I definitely didn't think of it as like a big business plan. It was more like a marketing strategy for myself rather than like building a marketplace like Upwork or Fiverr or something like that. It just kind of evolved into that over time. So it was pretty smooth sailing. It was just like I just told people about it at like our community breakfast and we were away.
So that's quite rare actually to have like a in real life distribution now. Like people usually say, oh, I've got Twitter following and that's how I drove traffic. But you started offline and then presumably over time it's spread by word of
Yeah.
mouth. And
I mean,
then
like, I think Yeah, so it did start offline. And the thing also is, I think when you think of like building something like Unicorn Factory or Fiverr or Upwork, you think you have to get distribution wide and far as fast as possible. But again, my goal was just to get work for myself. And so I was like, look, if one person puts a job onto our job board, mission accomplished. And so I was just very focused on like getting that first connection between me and a potential client. It wasn't like, hey, this needs to take off. I need to have X amount of website visitors. It was more a way of me just saying, hey, I'm freelancing and check me out on my own freelancing website that I created.
yeah,
I didn't even get the first job through there. A friend of mine got the first job through there. He was a Shopify developer.
right.
And so it didn't even really work out that way. But as soon as you start talking about it, especially I think in person, people can kind of resonate with the person a lot more
Yeah,
rather than with like the product or the business. And I think to a lot of people, I was just like the dude that played a lot of table tennis in the co-working space, and people were happy to like, share it with their network as well. And so, yeah, like the initial distribution was small, of course. Like, I mean, if you looked at my Google Analytics, I think by traditional metrics, it would have been a fail in terms of traffic on all accounts. But if you reposition the goal to like, I just want a few people to like reach out to me,
yeah,
then it was like mission accomplished.
yes, yeah, complete win. Okay, fine. And then so initially started with your like service business and a freelancing, built this platform, and then at some stage did it start to overtake as the kind of main focus or income?
Yeah. So when I started again, the Unicorn Factory, when I started, it was not intended to be a business. Like I didn't start it with the idea of starting the next Fiverr. It was
Yeah,
a marketing channel for me personally. And so for me, it always kind of sat on the side. It was incredibly cheap to run. I just had to pay for Webflow and Airtable and Zapier. So it was like under $100 a month. And I just started doing client work. And then I got to a point where it was building up more and more momentum. More and more people wanted to become freelancers on there. I, for the first time, started charging people to be on the site. And then I kind of set myself a rule, which was on average, I charged my clients $2,000 per month for Facebook advertising stuff. And I said, for every $2,000 that I make on the Unicorn Factory, so every $2,000 worth of monthly recurring revenue,
yeah.
we get to drop a client. And I did that. And then eventually I was out of clients.
Excellent. So very systematic in terms of like, and doing it in a kind of
Yeah.
risk-free. Yeah.
Because I was kind of like, well, if I'm making 2,000 a month off this business, then I could probably get to 4,000 a month of this business. I'll just need to dedicate a bit more time to it, which means I have to dedicate less time to the client stuff. But because I had kind of gone through like a period of working on a startup where I was like just not making any money at all and just like,
Yeah.
getting by. I don't even know how I paid for my life back then, but I was just like, making money is my top priority. I
Yeah.
am not playing games with trying to bootstrap some business to the top and hopefully, I was just like, nah, I am getting paid by my business every single month. whether that comes through freelancing or whether it comes through the Unicorn Factory. And yeah, I mean, it worked out. I mean, I feel like I've carried through that philosophy kind of with all the things that I've done since. But yeah.
Awesome. And was it pretty smooth sailing in terms of the growth of the Unicorn Factory, or has there been kind of tough times as well?
I mean, so I'll say this. I think what you define as smooth sailing or not smooth sailing really comes down to your expectations. So like if your expectations are to hit a certain revenue marker at a certain point and you are fall behind on that, then you would define that a bit more as a tough time. However, if you do not care, then you don't go through tough times as much. Yeah. So for the first few years, it was smooth sailing for me because I really didn't feel like I didn't have like expectations of what I wanted from it. You know, it was just like making money. It was like doing good for the freelancer community. I had clearly found product market fit. And so things were beautiful. Then COVID hit, everyone had to go into lockdowns. All of these businesses that had brick and mortar stores had to build an online presence, and things just took off. And during that period, I think the creative community or the freelance community as a whole kind of got spoilt a bit, which basically set the expectation that, oh, this is how it's like to be a freelancer. Like people just throw work at you, they pay heaps of money, all that kind of stuff. And so there was like a stretch where just things were just, I was just like, wow, like this freelancer marketplace thing is like way easier than I thought. And we were getting so many more full. Then for over the last 2 years, the market changed a bit. Now I wouldn't say it got worse. No, it did get worse, but you know, like the demand started to return to normal a bit. So, you know, I learned a lot about like the economic dynamics of how things work, but you know, like with all the interest rates rising everywhere, businesses are just not going to like spend money on, they're going to spend the least amount of money possible because it's so expensive to borrow money. And so freelancers and creative services are the first that are going to get cut. And so there was a period when that started where I was like, wow, like are my Google ads broken, or are my Facebook ads broken, or like why are people unhappy with the service and all that kind of stuff. And there was a period where I was like, man, I actually suck at this. And that is only because I had grown accustomed to having a certain amount of job posts every month, a certain amount of inquiries, a certain level of like customer churn, that kind of stuff. And because the market was just shifting, I was experiencing the counter side of that. And so there was definitely a period where I would say it wasn't smooth sailing. It was like, you know, it felt like you were kind of fighting an uphill battle, and all of the different things that you were trying were just not working in the same way. But I think on that note, a real important thing in a situation like that, especially when you're going through your first little downswing, is to have other people that you can talk to about this stuff. And one thing that I didn't realize at the time, I thought that a lot of the things that were going wrong were related specifically to me and the actions that I were taking and the decisions that I were making. But then I talked to friends who are running creative agencies in New Zealand, and they were like running out of business. Like people were having to let go of their teams. It was just not nice out there. No. And so I think it was really the first time where I experienced it specifically with the Unicorn Factory, that there was like a bit of like the trajectory was changing a bit. Yeah. But with that being said, you know, it also, the upswings don't highlight the issues in your business as much as the downswings do. So it also gave me an opportunity to really rethink, okay, how can I do this? How can I set this up in a way that I'm hedging my bets a bit? And running this by myself, running a somewhat lean business, gives you the freedom to do that, because like I've got endless runway essentially. Yeah. And yeah, so yeah, you have good times, you have bad times. That's essentially what it comes down to.
And it sounds like you tried a lot of different things. And was that a point where you started to diversify income a little bit? Because you also then, you know, I found you because I bought one of your courses. So you must start to like teach at the same time.
So I did my courses on my YouTube stuff when things were going absolutely great. So I didn't do it as a way to diversify my income. Actually, starting the YouTube stuff and setting up my courses was once again not one of those things where I was like, hey, I've got a business idea. It was just a series of events that led me into doing what I was doing. And I had just moved to Canada, and I basically wanted to try something new. You know, like sometimes when you move into like a new city or you move to a new neighborhood, it's a good chance to reset things. And I just decided I want to put myself out there a bit more. You know, I had spoken at the Webflow conference a few years back about how I created the Unicorn Factory with no-code tools, and that was a great experience. And ever since that day, a lot of people would email me asking me how to do this and that. And I was still doing a little bit of Facebook advertising at the time, and I didn't love it. I really never loved it. It was good for making money, but it was also kind of, you know, doing Mark Zuckerberg's dirty work is a little bit soul sucking, you know?
Yeah.
So I was just like, you know what, I'm going to challenge myself to put myself out there. And one of the things that I can do is make YouTube videos. So the way I committed to it was I bought a $500 camera. I signed up to a $1,000 YouTube course. And I was just like, my goal is just to get 10 videos out there and then we'll see. I go and do the course. The guy says, the secret is just make 2 videos a week for an entire year and your channel will blow up. And I was just kind of like, well, I suppose that's my new challenge now. And so for an entire year, I made 2 videos every single week. Didn't skip one. So I ended up with like 108 videos or something like that. And that was completely transformational. Now, just because I had been in business so long, I kind of also started to understand how I can kind of capitalize on that as well. I started off by doing consulting. So people would message me all the time after I started putting YouTube videos out there being like, oh, hey, can you like give me tips on how I can set up like a marketplace for like plumbers in like China or somewhere like that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And what I would do is I'd jump on consulting calls with them and I kind of show them my setup, explain how I do things. But I started to realize that people just needed a little bit more hands-on support. And so I basically started selling these coaching program things where it was like $6,000 and I would jump on a call and I'd like walk you through each step of the process. Then I realized no matter what marketplace or directory you're building, it's always the same. So I was just like, well, maybe I should just turn this into a course, because I had already had so much practice making videos. It was like so easy to just like record the process of building a marketplace. And then, yeah, from there, it just kind of evolved into that. And now I've got like a bunch of little courses. I get to work with people like you, Alex. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's good fun.
Yeah, and your community is great. You know, it's like it's probably, you know, top 3 communities I'm in terms of like value that you get back from it and these kind of
Oh,
interactions.
that's awesome.
It's definitely a great place to hang out. And when you started creating content, this is more of a personal interest question, but what did you start with? Did you just think, oh, I'll teach a bit of business stuff, or?
So I'm always so hesitant about giving business advice. So I just am like, because like I barely know what the hell I'm doing most of the time. So like, I don't think I should be giving business advice. But my approach was like, one thing that I can just teach people, which is like very straightforward and to the point, is I can just show people how I build these things. So like my first few videos were about what is Zapier? What is how to do this with Zapier? What is Webflow? How to do this with Webflow? Those kind of videos.
Yeah.
And when I was thinking about who am I making this video for, I always thought of myself before I discovered these tools. So the content was set up to be like super easy and understandable for someone who just has no background in any of this stuff, you know, may have never built a website. More for the ideas people, you know, not the people who are already dabbling in like more advanced no-code tools, you know.
Yeah.
But we don't need to impress each other, you know. It's like you're never gonna become like you're not the type of archetype of person I want to help. I'm more like I want to help the less competent version of myself get to the point where you can make maybe like 5, 6, 7 grand a month, something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so a lot of the videos that I made were just super basic tutorials, tool reviews, review different case studies, and yeah, that was kind of my approach, and that kind of stayed my approach for a long time.
Yeah.
Eventually you kind of get to a point where you're making 2 videos a week, so you start making up like random videos and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, overall,
Yeah. Force
yeah,
you
I
down
keep
rabbit
I
holes.
keep the business advice to the group,
Yeah, fair, fair. But it's good advice. You should share it more, definitely. What does the current kind of structure look like? Is it still just you, or do you work with a bunch of freelancers, or?
I hire freelancers for days. So
Yeah.
I mean, like there was like a period where I just wanted to do it all myself, and then I was just like, I'm getting over doing certain things over and over and over again. When it comes to the mastermind side of things, I do most of it myself because I keep the mastermind quite small. And like part of the value in the mastermind is that you can like, I don't know, I want to help people build their businesses essentially. I want them to like, and so I want to be involved in it. It's like, it's interesting to me. Like, I mean, like we've been on like heaps of calls together. It's fun to me, I'm always kind of keen to hear like what the challenges are, what the wins are. So I like to be super involved with that. So that side of the business I don't really outsource. The Unicorn Factory is run by robots and freelancers. Let me tell you, I do
Yeah.
not even look at that thing. No, I'm just joking.
Right. Yeah, you're going to come on to that. You're going to show us in a moment, but yeah. All
It's
right.
like I constantly get emails from freelancers being, "Oh, hey team." I'm like, "Hey, this thing is run by 0 people." Funnily enough, it's like this has just been sent into the abyss. Just so you know, you're never going to get an answer to this support ticket. No, they will from a robot. Now,
Yeah.
okay, back to being serious. Like the Unicorn Factory is so on autopilot that doesn't actually take up that much of my time, if I'm being honest. Um, I just the way I approach it is to just keep things as simple as possible, because as soon as you add complexity to a certain part of your thing, it makes it difficult to manage it over time. It's not the building that's the problem, it's the managing that's the problem. So
Mhm.
I've had so many ideas for new things I can add to the Unicorn Factory, but I just tend to stay away from it because ultimately, when it comes down to it, I've got one job on the Unicorn Factory and one job only, and that is help businesses hire freelancers. If I do that, then freelancers are getting work, businesses are finding A players, and everyone is happy.
Yeah.
Adding complexity to that by adding a quote generator feature, all that does is it creates support tickets.
Mhm.
All it does is make people reach out to you more. And then you have to hire people to manage that.
Yeah.
And so as long as you're like, the way I approach it is keep it simple, spend money on advertising, and yeah. Obviously, it doesn't work 100% that way. I still get a lot of support tickets of people being like, I want a refund, or,
Yeah.
why can I not update my profile and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, you just have to kind of deal with that. But I'm working my way to to managing that, to getting it to that point where it's even less work that I have to do.
So is the Unicorn Factory the main, I guess, revenue generator, but the least time input for you at the moment?
On a per hour basis, the Unicorn Factory would make me more money than anything I have ever done. If we look at it purely from a per hour return,
Okay.
because unless I'm actively building it, so if we take away the building it, if I just stop doing stuff on it, how much time would I have to dedicate to it? Honestly, like 2 to 3 hours a month now. It's really down to barely anything.
Yeah.
And so if I divide what I make a month by the hours I spend on it, it's a pretty crazy hourly rate.
Yeah.
When I compare it to like the course business and that type of stuff, the course business is way better for short-term cash flow.
Mhm.
So like I'll make way more in a month than on the Unicorn Factory, but I have to generate it. So
Yeah.
like I actually have to spend way more hours making YouTube videos, doing this, doing that. And so they're two different types of businesses.
Yeah.
The course business is not the type of business that you want to fully automate though,
Mhm.
because it's expensive to join. And I made it expensive on purpose to kind of filter out people who are not super serious about building their things.
Mhm.
And it is also building a business is a super personal thing as well. So
Mhm.
I want to like be there to support like everyone doing their stuff. And so there is no automating me or creating an AI version of me that will sit down with you, because sometimes you need to give advice. Other times you just need to be like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is sucks and this is unfair,
Well,
whatever.
actually, the top kind of groups, masterminds, communities I'm in, that is the common thread that the founder is active, very active. You'll get it might just be async, it might be text, but they're turning up every day, and they're not
For
too big,
sure.
and they're not dominated by like, individuals in the community. The founder is still super close and adding value, which I think is like it's just super important to maintain because there's loads of communities launching now, right? It's really kind of in vogue,
Yeah.
uh, but a lot of them just don't deliver a lot of value.
Yeah, I mean, like honestly, I was never really sure if like the course or education space was my thing. I just kind of happened to stumble into it. But I feel like just when you meet people at certain stages of them building their business, it's very easy to relate to them.
Mhm.
So, like, for example, when I see like the business that you're working on, even though you're working on a completely different business, I can relate to a lot of the things that you're doing or kind of trying to figure out because I have been in that position as well at some point.
Yeah,
And one, I find it super interesting to even just think about it, like
yeah,
and discuss those certain things. But you're also kind of like, if I were in your position, like what would be most helpful to me?
yeah.
And so I kind of take that approach to it. And I'm kind of like, sending you more tutorials, is sometimes not the answer.
No, I remember 9 months ago I had a chat with you, and you were like, "Look, you're trying to force the growth a little bit. You're like you're working on it too hard. Just step back a bit, automate what you can." And it was at that point that I fully automated the job board. I don't need to log in. And yeah, I mean, it's not growing like Billio, but then it's just freed up like so much mental space that actually it's grown in other ways. So like
Yeah.
it's sometimes not about like go and build this extra feature or follow this tutorial. It's just that like intervention to say, oh, actually you need to step back and let it run itself for a bit and see what happens.
I think there's a lot that can be learned from that just in general, because sometimes when we try super hard, we are trying to create something that we have envisioned in our mind, a certain outcome, when in reality, my opinion on these things is the market decides. And
Mhm.
sometimes you just need to let it go where the market will take you. And yeah, in the short term, you might not see the results that you had envisioned,
Mhm.
but as soon as the market carries you in the right direction, it will naturally gravitate you towards that. And that was kind of the thing that I think worked for the Unicorn Factory so well. There was such a long period of time where I actually did not feel the need to force it in a particular direction. Because I was freelancing myself, I was making good money. I had no pressures whatsoever on it becoming a certain type of thing. My responses to everything was just like someone would send me an email being like, hey, it would be really good if we could do this. I would ignore it. Then someone else would send me the same email. I would ignore it. But then the third time round, I'd be like, okay, reading these emails is taking me too much time.
Yeah,
I'm just going to build this thing to like eliminate getting these emails.
yeah,
And it's really like a lean approach. Like, when you hear, with the whole lean startup thing and, being agile, people get very academic about it.
yeah, yeah.
What I found is like, when I started taking this approach with the Unicorn Factory, I said, oh, this is what they mean when they say be like agile and be lean. It's just do the absolute bare minimum to add value
Mhm.
and then make small little improvements every once in a while.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we think that results come from high degrees of effort,
Mhm.
which I do think you have to put effort in. I definitely also believe that you get out what you put in, but sometimes it's actually just letting things play out the way that they're supposed to play out,
Yeah.
which I don't know. I mean, it might sound wishy-washy me saying that, but I actually do feel like the harder
Well,
you try, the harder it gets.
yeah, yeah, you've lived it as well. Sometimes you can't force things. It's just a case of like, turning up and doing the right stuff and just following your nose a little bit as well. And that's coming through as a bit of a kind of trend and people I speak to around this kind of lean entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I agree because when you Google that kind of term and when I came up with the name Leanpreneur, it's all lean startup stuff. And it's like people get super academic about it should be like this and it should be an MVP and it should be the business model canvas and etc. But in actual fact, it's just like looking at where you're spending your time and incrementally improving things.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's I don't know. I mean, I think the whole thing about like the lean startup, the book specifically, it's got a lot of good advice, but sometimes the lessons that are taught in the book have to be experienced and not read,
Mhm.
so that you truly understand what is meant by it.
Yeah.
Because when I built my first business, we were like on the lean startup kind of, that was being drilled into us by like our startup school, but we just didn't understand it because it's more a lesson that you experience rather than advice that you take, I suppose, you know?
I guess it's like building a load of futures and then no one cares. Like you need to do that to
Yeah.
realize that you probably shouldn't do that.
You need to build a load of shit to realize it was shit, you know?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
kind of how I see it.
Yeah, yeah. So what's life like now for you, day to day, week to week?
Well, to be honest with you, like at the moment I'm training for a marathon.
Right?
And so that has taken up my life.
Fantastic.
Like when I get into things, I get into things. Like when I get into YouTube, I am making 2 videos a week for a year. You
Yeah.
know, I have committed to this marathon, and so I'm building my life around that a bit. And it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with business, but my dream was always to build a lifestyle business that would support this.
Mhm.
Sometimes I see people online who talk about how they're like turn over like 13 million a year, but they also work 60 hours a week. That just sounds like a freaking nightmare. I want to do all the stuff that I feel like doing, and this sounds like very over the top a bit, but like if I
No.
want to run a marathon, I want to actually be able to give it my all, and
Yeah.
I want my work and my business to support me on that endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, can you
100%.
imagine how hard it is to like, just go for like a run at 12 o'clock in the afternoon if you've got like an 8 to 6 job or a 9 to 5 job?
Yeah.
It's hard. You have to work around that. My business has kind of been set up to support me in the things I want to do. Same applies to like traveling, all those kind of things.
Mm.
And so my business will never be as big, or as of right now, these types of businesses that I'm setting up will never be as big as, say, like, I don't know, maybe it will be. I mean, like, there are examples of people that do it. Like, for example, Peter Levels, I mean,
Yeah.
like, he makes like 2 million a year, and it looks like he's up to like, he's like traveling everywhere and all that kind of
He's
stuff.
on Twitter all day. Yeah.
But I have basically set up a business that pays me good money. It allows me to do what I want. It allows me to travel. It allows me to train for marathons. It allows me to explore all these different things, experiment with new businesses, all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah. So the answer is right now I'm really focused on like marathons.
Yeah.
I'm also redoing our courses, the MVMP courses. The way I kind of approach it with my courses is like you get version 1 out there, you see what's working for people, you see what's not working for people, you wait for like a year, maybe a year and a half, then you go and create version 2. And I think version 2 is when you came along.
Yeah.
You put that out there, you see what works for people, you see what doesn't work for people, then you go out and try version 3. And over that time, there'll be new tools, there'll be new processes that I would have learned along the way.
Mm.
And so now I'm kind of doing that. And once I've got all of that stuff ready, back onto YouTube, play
Yeah.
that game, jump on that hamster wheel, and
Oh,
hopefully sell a lot of courses.
Well, that's a fantastic answer. I mean, that's what it's about. Like, you saying that your focus is your marathon running. I mean,
Yeah,
that's why everyone should be building businesses, like this. Like for me, like, I do a school drop off, school pickup. And yeah, I mean, my business won't be as big as, Joe Bloggs down the road who has 10 staff or whatnot. But, I swap my time like every day of the week. Like you can't get it back. So it's, that's what's important to me. And it sounds like it's what's important to you as well.
for sure. Like, this is gonna sound strange. I actually sometimes when I see on Twitter, it seems to me that a lot of people's lives revolve around their work.
Mm.
It does not for me. Like, I want to do good work and I want to like provide value to the people that I, do work for. And it's important to me that, that they get a great experience from whatever it is that I'm doing. But my life really doesn't revolve around work. There was like when I built my first business, a lot of my self-worth came from how my business was doing. And because my business was doing not so good, I felt really bad about myself. I detached from that. That was like the only way that I could really reset things, which is just like how good your business is doing or how much money you're pulling through Stripe says nothing about you.
No.
You know, they're like two separate entities.
Yeah.
And I feel like when people get into the habit of being posting revenue numbers on Twitter, which is fine, I have no problem with that whatsoever. But when people get super public about their revenue numbers and stuff like that, what that tells me is that your self-worth is too tied to the business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because who are you sharing that with? Like, yeah, you're sharing it with your Twitter followers, but like, who are you sharing that with?
Yeah.
And I think it's more to be like, look, I am not a piece of shit. I am so good at making money or whatever.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm just like, I just could not care less, My standards are super simple. It's like, I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to like pursue my hobbies in whatever way I want. I want to be able to spend my time working with people who are doing cool stuff. And, also want to make sure that, I want to have like a decent standard of living, like I want to have like fancy cameras and a teleprompter and all that kind of stuff. But like, overall, I, I don't, like my aspirations is not to have like supercars and all that kind of stuff. Like I'm a simple man.
Yeah, of course you are. So on that note, do you want to show us a little bit of how you run things and spend 2 or 3 hours on a major revenue course?
Yeah, I can show you. I'll show you my Stripe account so you can see how much revenue I'm making.
You don't need to do that.
Nah, no, let me quickly. I'll show my Glide portal. Okay, context. Unicorn Factory has businesses and freelancers. One of the big challenges is that you need to make it easy for them to use your platform. That was something that, from a tech perspective was always kind of like a little bit difficult to do with no code tools. But I, over the last year and a bit, discovered a new tool that allows me to very easily create these really awesome user portals. And it's actually turned into being one of the no code tools that I'd probably recommend for anyone getting started. And it's called Glide. Basically, you take databases like Airtable, you can kind of Google Sheets, whatever, and you turn the data that sits in those databases into apps. Now, this here is an example of what the freelancer will look at. So in here, they'll be able to see jobs that are listed on our website. So they can come in, they can kind of see the kind of projects that are on. If they're interested, they can apply for them, that kind of stuff. They can keep track of all of their inquiries. They can manage their profile, all those kind of things. And this was something that was like a little bit time consuming for me for a certain period of time because a lot of this stuff had to be done kind of manual with hacks and it would constantly cause issues. And so now that I've been using this tool, it's been quite optimized, which I'm super happy with. Another thing that you can do with this that I really, really love is you can integrate it with AI tools. Now, I might actually just show you my favorite demo in the client portal. Let's switch it to my account. I know you've seen this a million times, Alex, but because
No,
I
no, yeah.
can't, I can't shut
Well,
up about it if I'm being honest.
give
But
it.
this is a tool that I created to make it easier for businesses to create better job listings on the site. So the way it works is you come in here, and then from in here, you can just tell people what you're working on. So give me a job, Alex. What are we looking for? Shall we say like an editor for my newsletter
Good one.
called... Okay, so actually, let's put it in here, called Leanpreneur. How do you even spell that?
Oh yeah.
Oh, it needs an A.
Oh yeah.
And so you just come in. This is how people would like write their job listings: 2 to 3 newsletters per month. And so the problem that we have with this is people will put that in there, and that it would just not appeal to any freelancer. No one would apply it because it's not particularly clear what's going on. And so there was this disconnect between what does a good job brief look like and, you know, what's too much. And so what we did was we created this kind of system where you can just type in all of your specifications, and then we use AI to create a high quality job listing.
Yeah.
And I'm super happy with it. People have given me great feedback on it, which I'm super happy about. The only downside with this has been that people who are like complete time wasters have started writing incredibly good job briefs. And so this is what it looks like. So you can see here, it generates a title for you. It writes your entire project brief and with everything that you need. And then all you need to do is hit the submit listing button. It gets sent to us, and then we'll post it to our job board and notify anyone who has a certain expertise in this.
Yeah. Awesome. And I
So
think when
that's that.
people think of like using an AI tool like that, obviously I'm in recruitment, so we use it to write job ads and look for tools that help you do that externally. And there's probably a few ChatGPT wrappers out there that do that, but you're building a full app based on a database, and then within that, applying AI tools. So it's like even
That is
more
correct.
functionality.
Yeah, you can set up all of the AI integrations natively in here.
Mhm.
It's awesome. Glide has done a phenomenal job. There's a little bit of a learning curve. I think if you're like a complete beginner, it's like there's a little bit of a learning curve because you have to get used to how databases work and all that kind of stuff. But these tools really allow you to do a lot. They really, like, if you're like at the stage where you just want to like test out an idea, this here, building something like this would typically cost you $10, $20, $30,000, but you can just whip this up for like $25 a month. So
And
we live in a good time to build things.
you said it was a bit janky beforehand, like, and I'll know what you were using, but you were using MemberStack and Webflow and things, and so
Yeah.
but it was kind of a bit plugged together rather than
Yeah. That was, like the thing about like no code in the good old days, like when we started with it, is that like no code wasn't really as mainstream as it has become. But over the last 3-4 years, it's really become a bigger thing. And so you just get more tools solving for certain types of use cases. And so things have just gotten better. And now instead of having to glue together 50,000 tools, there are like actual full out of the box solutions that are actually quite good. And so Glide is one of those. But when I started the Unicorn Factory, this here was not a viable option. So I used a different combination of tools, which was MemberStack, and I don't even want to think back to those days. Don't get me wrong, MemberStack was a great tool and is still a good tool, just not for my particular use case. I think for my use case, there's just too much room for error.
Yeah. Well, I started down the route with MemberStack and then moved on to Glide when you recommended it, and it was just way easier. And before that, I'd tried Softer and things as well. But yeah, it's a great tool for building apps. And I guess from running the business in a lean way, I guess you're building interfaces for your customers through the website, through these apps that then minimize the time you have to spend on the business. Is that right?
That's correct. Anything, my philosophy for building things is it either makes me more money, it saves me more time, and saves me more time means gives me less support emails that I need to answer,
Mhm,
or it helps increase this key value proposition, which is it gets more work for freelancers.
mhm,
If
mhm.
it's not, if I don't see a clear path towards any of those three, it just goes to the dumpster, you know? Because, like, yeah, like for example, I've had an idea to generate like an AI quote generator for freelancers. So when a client messages them, being like, "Oh, I need a new website. How much will it quote?" They can just like smash in like some figures into like a little form, and that then generates a PDF quote that can be sent. Now, I can kind of see how that would lead to them closing more deals, which is one of like the core value propositions that I'm working towards. But it's also the time and effort in order to achieve that outcome is just like the trade-off is not particularly good, or at least there are other things I could be doing that are more valuable.
Yeah.
And so I kind of evaluate it on that basis.
Mhm, mhm. No, that makes sense. And then,
Yeah.
I mean, if you were to kind of give, one key piece of advice to someone looking to create a lean business, what would you tell them? I know you've given loads of advice already.
Yeah, I think my number one advice is just do it, because you will never learn anything listening to podcasts,
Mhm,
watching YouTube videos, except for maybe mine. My YouTube videos are bangers. But no, the key thing is, I also kind of feel like I want to say this to everyone who watches my YouTube videos. Is like, you're going to go nowhere by watching 20 YouTube videos on a particular topic. At some point, you're just going to have to whip out that credit card, sign up to that tool, and actually just start building stuff. Because a majority of the time, you actually learn the good stuff by actually just trying it out and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work. I think, like, ultimately, when it comes down to it, this is actually probably the best advice you can get, is that there's nothing you can learn from reading it. And yes, of course, that sounds like a super controversial thing to say, but like in the context of building a business, their own, it's like the actions that you take are going to be so much more valuable than the tutorials that you watch.
mhm, mhm.
Obviously, watching the tutorials is better than doing nothing,
Yeah.
but you actually have to do the work. And so the question is just like, well, how long do you want to wait for it?
Mm,
Just freaking do it
yeah.
and then just
I
see where
love
things go.
Awesome. And I was going to follow up to say, like, give me a resource that's had a big kind of influence on you. Obviously, you're going to push your own channel.
Well, like okay, so if you want to know what the hands down best resources on the internet, just go to connorfinlayson.com. No, I mean, here's the thing. The best resources are related to what you are doing.
Mhm,
Okay. My stuff is definitely not what I would read if your goal is to become like a venture backed startup.
mhm,
My stuff is just not that. But my stuff is about how can you like run a business without having huge overhead costs. Like I'm not my thing is kind of like I don't go down that VC route. So if you're like one day down the line I want to build like a VC backed business, the advice that I give is probably not the advice that you're looking for, if I'm being honest. If you want to build an e-commerce store, my stuff is not the stuff that you want to be looking for. So oftentimes the best resources you'll find on YouTube, you'll find blogs, you'll find people to follow on Twitter. There are a whole bunch of courses out there. It really comes down to what it is that you're doing. But yeah, I think just things that I have found useful personally. I mean, I've done courses that have been super helpful. I did the Consulting Accelerator by Sam Ovens, which, by the way, I think they don't sell anymore, but that was great.
mhm.
I've read a lot of books that have kind of influenced the path that I have taken. So anything by Derek Sivers is kind of like my jam when it comes to like the business philosophy side of things. Um, and then yeah, I think other than that, no code related stuff is like my stuff is like the is like the go-to. But
Yeah.
I mean, other than that, like, you dabble in the space long enough, you'll kind of find what works for you.
So, like hunting tactically based on what you need at that time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, for example, like, and this is the thing, it's like when people recommend books, you know, you don't need to read a book on personal finance, even though everyone's recommending it, if you don't have issues with personal finance. But if you're like trying to figure out how to save more money or how to make more money, then a book like that can be life changing. So it really the context when you read something is super important,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, 100%. And so, oh, you've already mentioned it already, but connorfinlayson.com is where they can
Yeah.
find you. Unicornfactory.nz
NZ, yeah.
and
And then my YouTube channel, I think just search Connor Finlayson and it will
yeah,
pop up.
yeah. And what's next for you other than winning a marathon?
Winning a marathon, we're very far from winning a marathon. My goal is to just survive, eh? My goal is just to finish. What is next for me? Well, yeah, honestly, the marathon's up there in my priority list right now. Redoing the courses up there in my priority list right now. Um, I think those are the two things that I'm most focused on right now.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I suppose the next thing you'll see from me are my courses and relaunching the YouTube channel.
Yeah,
But
awesome.
yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much for sharing so candidly, and I always find you like super humble when you share your journey and what you've done. It's completely honest as well. So
Ah,
yeah, hopefully people get that.
Alex, always you get the good stuff. You get the exclusive stuff, you know.
I'll
All
take.
right. Well, hey,
Brilliant.
thanks for having me.
No worries.
It is always fun, always
Yeah.
a pleasure, never a chore. And yeah,
Well,
look forward to reading it all.
cool.